Navigating between routes is quite bland by default. Flutter graciously provides you with the MaterialPageRoute and CupertinoPageRoute classes, and while their transition animations don't look bad, there's certainly something more we can do. Could we, for example, animate parts of the pushed page independently and even make the animation staggered like this? Of course we can, we are in Flutter after all. Hello, welcome to ResoCoder, where you're getting prepared for real app development so that you will get freelance clients or a job and be confident about the apps you build. So subscribe and hit the bell to join us on our quest for becoming in-demand Flutter developers. As you've already seen, by the end of this tutorial, you are going to know how to build this kind of a fully custom page transition animation, which is in addition staggered. So we hit this floating action button and you can see that the red container animates in first, and only after that the green container animates into the page. This is in contrast with the default page transitions, whether they are Material or Cupertino, which just simply animate the whole page at once and not its parts individually. We have this kind of a starter project already prepared so that you don't need to build out the basics from the scratch. It contains two pages, the first page and second page, just like in the already finished app. But the difference is that currently the second page in this starter project is just animated as a whole using the MaterialPageRoute. And if you want to get this starter project and also learn at your own pace from a written tutorial, be sure to check out the written tutorial from the link in the video description. Let's launch this app and see how it looks like right now with this MaterialPageRoute. Here it is, and sure enough, it looks as we would expect it to. The whole page just animates at once, but what's nice is that this floating action button hero animation, we have that sort of for free because heroes are animated automatically, and they are certainly one type of a cross-page animation. In order to animate parts of a page independently, we just simply need to get rid of this MaterialPageRoute present inside the first page widget. That's because MaterialPageRoute hides a few parameters from us, and it simply uses them itself to animate the whole page at once. What we need to do or have here instead is a PageRouteBuilder. And instead of a builder, this thing takes in a page builder. And it doesn't just give us context, but also it gives us an animation and also something called secondary animation. Let's make this into a block body method like this. And now we have the animation and secondary animation. So what are they? Well, animations in Flutter, if you don't know already, are basically just a value which is smoothly transitioning between its start and end boundaries. Of course, there is more to it. It's also a listenable, so you can listen to those changes. But in essence, it's really just, in this case, a double, so a number transitioning between two values in a smooth way. And if you need to brush up on animation skills yourself, you can check out the tutorial from the card in the corner. And what's up with this animation and secondary animation? Well, we are only interested in this animation because this one is for when this actual route itself is being animated to be visible. Secondary animation is used when another route is being animated on top of this second page. So we are not going to use that. And what do we want to do with this animation? Well, we're just going to pass it into the second page under the parameter name, argument name, transition animation, and pass in the animation. We're going to create this sort of a field in the second page widget in just a bit. And as with any animation, even page transitions can be configured to have a certain duration, which is by default set to be 300 milliseconds, but we want to make it a bit longer. So let's set transition duration here. We're going to set it to const duration, and let's say seconds 1, just so that we can see it for a longer period of time. And also watch out, because we are using PageRouteBuilder directly inside our widget tree and using navigator of push. This is not necessarily a bad thing to do when you have just a small app and you are just testing things out, but as soon as you get to any production grade app, you should really use push named and other named methods. And instead of having your PageRouteBuilders scattered throughout the widget tree, you should really put them inside on generate route method. This animation will work still the same, but this whole code would just simply not be inside the first page, but inside on generate route method, present on your Material app or Cupertino app. All right, now all that's left for us to do, at least for now, is to go over to the second page. And we of course need to create the transition animation field over there. And we are going to create it. So let's say final transition animation. Actually, let's give it a type animation double. And let's hit Control dot or Command dot on Mac, and we are going to generate a constructor for final fields. And with this, we have just gotten rid of the error on the first page because the parameter is already present on the second page constructor. And now that we have this transition animation, which is of course passed by reference as anything in Dart, now we're gonna be able to listen to the updates on this transition animation and build our app accordingly. In order to slide something or otherwise move something on the screen, the most versatile approach we could use here would be to use a transform, which would allow for even rotation, scaling, and whatever you really want. Even you could do some 3D distortion. So transforms are certainly one option to do it. But since we are just going to slide something on the screen, we may as well use the slide transition instead, because it's a bit simpler to use. So how can we add some animation here? Well, we first need to wrap the container, which we have two instances of. One is red and another one is green, and they are both in expanded widgets inside a column. Well, we need to wrap this container inside an AnimatedBuilder, which will make sure to rebuild the underlying widget tree every time the value of the animation simply changes. So let's wrap this with a widget. Its name will be AnimatedBuilder. And with this, we need to provide an animation, which will be the transition animation, which, as you remember, is just passed by reference. So it's going to be updated just fine. And then we also need to provide a builder method, which is where the magic is going to happen. This takes in a context and a child. And this child parameter is pretty important because, as you can see, the AnimatedBuilder's child is indeed the red container which we want to animate. Using children for such builders as the AnimatedBuilder is a good practice, because essentially the child is not going to be rebuilt. The only thing which is going to be rebuilt are the widgets which are instantiated inside the builder method, and not the child. Child is going to be built only once, or potentially on its own accord when it tries to set state inside of it and so on, but it's not going to be rebuilt every time the animation is updated. So again, what do we want to use here? Well, we want to use slide transitions. So return slide transition, and this takes in a position which is going to be of type animation offset. But we do not have an animation offset passed in, we have an animation double. This is the perfect use case for using a tween. So we're going to create tween offset, and tweens allow us to smoothly transition between two values, just like animation does. But what we are allowed to do with tweens is essentially change the type which the animation performs its updates on. We're going to take a double and use it to drive a tween of offsets. So we need to specify the beginning of the tween, and since we are working with offsets, the beginning will be an offset 2. And now what should the initial offset be? We need to provide double dx and dy, so the offset on the x-axis. And if we take a look at the app, which currently of course does not work because we have broken the code, but this is going to work just fine. Okay, so in the preparation app, we can see that we want the red container animate from the right side of the screen. So this means that the initial offset needs to be such that this thing, the red container, will be pushed away from the viewport of the screen to the right. So this beginning of the container will be completely at the right side of the screen. So how can we do that? Well, we need to set the offset to be 1, 0. I'll explain these values in just a bit. So why is it 1, 0? The origin of the coordinate space in Flutter is 0, 0, of course, and 0, 0 is positioned in the top left corner, right here. So this is precisely on the x coordinate at which the left edge of the container is positioned. And since we want to move it to the right, and the screen has an offset, let's say, of 1 offset is just the full screen in the given axis. So that's why we move it to 1, 0. 1 is for the x-axis, and on the y-axis we want to stay pat, so we are not going to move it over there. And then the end offset is going to be 0, 0, because we want to move it back to the original position without offset. But we cannot just provide a tween, we need to provide an animation of offset, and that's precisely what we are going to use the transition animation for. So we're going to say tween.animate, and transition animation will be the driver of this tween. Now let's copy this builder and animation from here, and we are going to wrap the green container also inside AnimatedBuilder. And let's provide the copied code to that AnimatedBuilder. And of course, we want the green container to animate from the left side. So we're going to just set the offset to be -1. And with this done, let's see how it looks like. We're going to go back to the app. Let's restart it, I guess. And let's see how it looks like. And it doesn't do absolutely anything, which is my mistake, because we actually need to provide the child to the slide transition. Apart from position, of course, the slide transition takes in a child, and we need it to be the child, which is in this case the container. So let's do the same thing above, provide a child to the slide transition. And now when we go over to the emulator, we are going to see that the containers are animated independently. So we are getting somewhere, but they are animated at precisely the same time, which is not what we want, right? We want the animation to be staggered. That means that the red container will arrive first, and only then the green container will start to animate and arrive as second. Of course, another problem, which is kind of obvious, is the horrible code duplication, because we pretty much have the same widgets here with only minor differences, but we have them duplicated. We are going to take care of the duplication in just a bit. Let's for now take a look at how to make the animation staggered, because making the red container arrive sooner than the green one is actually quite simple, because when you think about it, both of the animations are currently completely linear, going from 0 to 1. What we want to do instead is to change the curve so that the red animation will arrive at the value 1 first, and only then start changing the value of the green animation, as you can see on the charts right now. This is achievable by using an interval curve in conjunction with a curved animation, which will be driven by our transition animation. So we're going to simply cut out the transition animation as it is now, and into the animate method of the tween, we are going to simply provide a curved animation, and this curved animation takes in a curve which will be an interval curve which takes in the starting point, so beginning and end, in doubles. And since we want the red container to animate in first, so we want it to take up the first half of the animation, going from 0 to 0.5. And then we also need to provide a parent for the curved animation, which in this case will be the transition animation. So basically what we are doing here is taking the transition animation, changing its value output in a way that it's going to stop animating when the halftime of the animation, the original one, comes. We are doing that using the interval curve and also curved animation. And then we are using this curved animation to drive the tween. And this tween in turn simply provides its values to the slide transition, which does its thing. While we are at it, we can also swap the unexciting linear nature of our curve with something more exciting. For example, we are going to use ease out cubic curve over here, which we can provide to the interval. So curve of the interval will be curves ease out cubic. And again, horrible code duplication. We are going to copy this curved animation, paste it into the green containers tween. And we simply need to change the beginning to be 0.5 and the end will be 1. So this animation will take place from the half of the original animation until its end. So if we go here, navigate back, we can immediately see that it's being animated nicely. But the code duplication, even with just 2 animated widgets, is totally hard to maintain even now, and we must get rid of it. And we are going to tackle this code duplication with Provider, with the Provider package, because we could essentially create just a widget and pass around the transition animation through a bunch of constructors, but passing stuff through many constructors is not that great, because when you need to change something, you need to change a lot of code again. So we're going to use Provider to mitigate these issues. So in order to use Provider, we need to hop into PubSpec YAML, and we are going to add a dependency with PubSpec Assist extension, Provider. Currently it's at version 4.1.2, but what we are about to do here should really work with any kind of a version, at least the recent ones, and also into the future, hopefully. And as always, you can get all of this PubSpec YAML code and also the second page.dart code from the link in the video description from the written tutorial. Inside the first page, actually, we are now no longer going to just pass the transition animation into the second page through its constructor. We are instead going to wrap this inside a provider. So let's just return provider. We're going to import the provider.dart package, and now copy second page, and inside the providers create, we are going to provide the animation, right? And the child of the provider will be second page. We could leave it at this, but the problem with animations is that they are really just a subclass of a listenable, and Provider has problems with providing listenable classes. In this instance, it would be completely fine to use a regular provider, but in order not to get errors, we need to use a listenable provider instead. It just adds a few bells and whistles on top of the regular provider, like for example the ability to use consumer and selector widgets, just like with a change notifier provider. We don't need those bells and whistles right now, but we just need to use listenable provider in order not to get any errors. And now with this done, we can hop into the second page, and we are going to simply extract everything down from the AnimatedBuilder into its own widgets. So let's put our cursor on the AnimatedBuilder. Let's hit Control dot or Command dot in VS Code, and we are going to say extract widget. Its name is going to be sliding container. Okay. We pass in the transition animation, which we actually don't want to do. So let's remove that transition animation argument from there. Let's scroll down, and we're going to get rid of this transition animation. But we certainly do want to pass something as the animation into the AnimatedBuilder. So we are going to use provider to obtain the animation from the page above. So let's say final animation is equal to provider of, again, let's import provider of animation double, and we are going to provide context over there and also specify that we do not want to listen, which means that we do not want to simply rebuild the widget tree of the sliding container whenever the value of the animation is updated. We are going to rebuild the widget tree using AnimatedBuilder instead. So let's specify the animation inside the AnimatedBuilder. And now we need to make this sliding container widget a more generic one so that we can use it both for the red container and also the green container. So this means that we need to be able to modify the offset, also the interval, and also the color of the container itself. So this means we are going to create a bunch of fields inside of this sliding container. So let's say final double initial offset X. Now I'm going to copy this below a bunch of times. Interval start, then interval ends, and finally final color. Now we're going to hop onto the sliding container constructor, add final field formal parameters, and now we can use them instead of the hard-coded values. So the offset is going to be initial offset X and then 0. The interval curve, its starting point will be interval start and will be interval end. Let's add a comma here so that it's nicely formatted. And lastly, the color of the container is also going to be pulled from the field, so color. All right. And again, you can get all of this code and also go through this lesson at your own pace from the link in the video description, which is going to take you to resocoder.com. With this done, we can scroll up, and yeah, here we are already using the sliding container inside expanded. We just need to provide the arguments to the constructor, and actually let's make those arguments required. So add required. All right. With this done, we are now going to get at least a warning here. So initial offset X for the red container will be 1, because again, we want it to arrive from the right side of the screen. Then the interval start will be 0, interval end will be 0.5. And lastly, the color, let's actually specify it first so that we know what we are talking about in this sliding container, will be colors red. Okay, now we can copy this sliding container and replace the contents of this expanded widget. Okay, its color will be green, initial offset will be -1, interval start will be 0.5, and its end will be 1. Cool. And now we can hop into our app, possibly hot restart it to apply all of the changes. And once we hit the floating action button, we can see that the animation is still there. It's looking sharp. And also we have successfully separated our code into a small widget, which is reusable and also maintainable. And again, it looks really cool. So, to go through this tutorial at your own pace once again and to get all of the code, check out the written tutorial available from the link in the video description. And if you are serious about becoming a great Flutter developer who can build real apps for clients or at a job, go to flutter.education. Link is also in the video description to get the top curated Flutter news and resources aimed at improving your app development career. Over there you can also subscribe to my mailing list to get the best Flutter resources delivered weekly right into your inbox. And if you don't want to miss more tutorials like this, where we deal with these kinds of nice, smooth, and interesting animations, be sure to subscribe to this channel and also join the notification squad by hitting the bell button to make sure you grow your Flutter skills, because here on ResoCoder, I am determined to provide you with the best tutorials and resources so that you will become an in-demand Flutter developer. If this video helped you with understanding how to build cross-page transitions which are fully custom and staggered, give this video a like and also share it with other developers who are surely going to find it beneficial too. Leave a comment if you have anything to say, and see you in the next video.